Ethan Morris straightened his tie and took a deep breath. The air inside the shuttle felt too thin, but that was probably just his nerves. Through the small window, he could see the massive ship they were approaching. The Eternal Glory was the flagship of the Galactic Empire's diplomatic fleet, and it made Earth's largest vessels look like toys. 2 minutes to docking, the pilot announced. Ethan nodded and glanced at the small team accompanying him. 2 security officers, a xenobiologist, and a communications expert. 5 humans total, representing all of Earth at this historic meeting. No pressure. Remember, Ethan said quietly, we are here to listen and learn. The Empire has been watching us for decades. This is just the first official contact. The shuttle shuddered as it entered the docking bay of the enormous ship. Ethan had been preparing for this moment for months, ever since the Empire's probes had revealed themselves in Earth's orbit and sent their first message. Humanity had just united under a single planetary government after centuries of division. They had barely begun to explore their own solar system when the Empire arrived. The shuttle door opened with a hiss. Ethan stepped out first, his shoes clicking on the polished metal floor. The docking bay was cavernous with dozens of strange ships lining the walls. A delegation waited for them. 6 beings of different species, all wearing similar uniforms with different colored markings. The one in front stepped forward, tall and gray-skinned with 4 arms and eyes that blinked sideways. This was Admiral Zixthar, according to the briefing materials. "Welcome aboard the Eternal Glory," the Admiral said, his words translated through a small device on his uniform. "I trust your journey was comfortable?" "Very much so, thank you," Ethan replied with a slight bow. "On behalf of Earth, we are honored by this invitation." The Admiral made a gesture that might have been a smile or a grimace. "Follow me to the conference room. The Empire is eager to discuss Earth's future within our protection." As they walked through the massive corridors, Ethan noted how the other crew members, beings of many shapes and colors, paused to stare at the humans, some with curiosity, others with what seemed like pity. The conference room had a large oval table with the Empire's symbol projected above it, a spiral galaxy with a spear through its center. Not the most reassuring image, Ethan thought. "Please, be seated," Admiral Zixthar said, gesturing to one side of the table. The human delegation sat together while the Empire representatives spread out on the other side. A holographic display appeared in the center of the table, showing Earth rotating slowly. "A beautiful world," a squid-like creature said from across the table. "Rich in resources and positioned at a strategic junction of hyperspace lanes you have yet to discover. We are still learning about our place in the galaxy," Ethan said carefully. "Admiral." Zixthar nodded. "Which is why the Empire has decided to offer Earth protected status. We have been observing your development for some time. Your species has potential." "Protected status sounds generous," Ethan replied. "What exactly does that entail?" The Admiral pressed a button and the hologram changed to show a document. "Standard terms. The Empire will provide defensive fleets in your system. We will share certain technologies, medical, agricultural, transportation. In return, Earth will supply resources and personnel as needed for Imperial projects." As Ethan read through the terms, his diplomatic smile became harder to maintain. The resources mentioned were excessive, nearly 40% of Earth's mineral production, and personnel seemed to be a polite word for conscripted labor. "These terms seem rather one-sided," Ethan said, choosing his words carefully. A reptilian being with scales that shifted color hissed softly. "All protected worlds begin with similar arrangements. As you prove your value and loyalty to the Empire, terms improve." "I see," Ethan said, not seeing at all. "And if Earth were to decline this protection?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "That would be unwise," Admiral Zixthar said. "The galaxy is full of dangers, pirate fleets, resource hunters, slave traders. A world at your level of development, without protection, well..." He left the threat hanging in the air. Ethan felt sweat forming on his brow but kept his expression neutral. This wasn't a diplomatic meeting. It was an implied threat. "Tell me," the Admiral continued, studying Ethan's face, "how did your planet finally achieve unity? Our records show centuries of constant warfare, then sudden cooperation. We realized that our differences were less important than our shared humanity," Ethan answered. "After the climate crisis of the 2030s, we understood that we needed to work together." The Admiral made a sound like stones grinding together, apparently a laugh. "Yes, typical of species at your stage. You dread war so much that you will surrender your sovereignty to avoid it." Something cold settled in Ethan's stomach. "Excuse me?" "It is nothing to be ashamed of," the Admiral continued, misreading Ethan's reaction. "Many species in the Empire began as war dreaders. You build a planetary government to avoid conflict among yourselves. You will accept our protection to avoid conflict with us. It is efficient." The xenobiologist next to Ethan whispered, "Cultural misunderstanding. They think our unity means weakness." Ethan barely heard her. Blood was rushing to his face as the Admiral continued. "Humans will be particularly valuable to the Empire. Your clear dread of warfare makes you excellent workers, compliant. You understand your place." Ethan stood up so quickly, his chair fell. Backward with a crash, the Empire delegation flinched, some reaching for weapons. "You think we united because we fear war?" Ethan's voice was quiet but filled with intensity. "Admiral, humanity doesn't dread war. We respect it." "What difference?" the Admiral began, but Ethan cut him off. "We have fought more wars in our short history than most species fight in millennia. We've developed more ways to kill each other than you can imagine. We united not because we fear conflict, but because we understand its cost better than anyone." The Admiral's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. "Your diplomatic records show that we try peace first, always, but mistake that for weakness at your peril." Ethan's hands were shaking now, not with fear but with rage. "Humanity dreads unnecessary war, Admiral. But if pushed, if threatened, if backed into a corner, we excel at necessary war." A tense silence filled the room. The Empire representatives looked at each other, clearly not expecting this reaction. "Are you threatening the Galactic Empire diplomat?" the reptilian being asked softly. Ethan took a deep breath. "I am clarifying a misunderstanding before it leads somewhere neither of us wants to go. The terms you offer are not acceptable to Earth. We are open to true diplomatic relations as equals." Admiral Zixithar stood slowly. He was nearly 7 feet tall, towering over Ethan. "This meeting is concluded for today. Your shuttle will return you to Earth. We will reconsider our approach." As the human delegation was escorted back to their shuttle, the communications expert whispered to Ethan, "Sir, that might not have been the most diplomatic response." Ethan watched as the massive ship grew smaller through the shuttle window. "Diplomacy requires honesty," he replied, and they needed to hear the truth. What he didn't say was that he'd seen the weapon systems on the Imperial ship. Earth stood, no chance in a direct conflict. He'd just started a dangerous game, and he could only hope Earth would have time to prepare for what came next. The United Earth Council chamber was silent after Ethan finished speaking. 12 faces stared at him with expressions ranging from shock to anger. President Samantha Powell sat at the head of the oval table, her fingers pressed together in a steeple. The morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the Geneva building, but the mood in the room was dark. "Let me get this straight," General Alan Martinez said, breaking the silence. "You told the representative of an advanced alien empire with technology centuries beyond ours that we don't fear war?" Ethan stood his ground. "I told them the truth. They misunderstood our peaceful unification as cowardice. That's dangerous." Admiral Lisa Franklin, head of Earth's small space fleet, nodded slowly. "He's right. If they think we're easy targets, they'll treat us like easy targets." President Powell sighed. "The Empire's ships are still in orbit. They could wipe out our major cities before we could blink." "But they haven't," Ethan pointed out. "Not yet, that tells us something." Maria Ortiz, the strategic analyst who had been quietly taking notes, spoke up. It tells us they want something from Earth that bombing us wouldn't get them. The room fell silent again as everyone considered this. Outside the window, life in Geneva continued normally. People walked to work unaware that 12 people in this room were trying to prevent humanity's enslavement or destruction. We need to understand them better, President Powell finally said. Ethan, explain this war-dreading concept again. Ethan walked to the display screen and pulled up images from the Empire database they had been given during first contact. The Empire classifies species in many ways. One important classification is how they respond to conflict. Species that fight constantly among themselves are seen as primitive, but potentially useful as soldiers. Species that unite peacefully are labeled war dreaders and are seen as natural workers or servants. That's ridiculous, General Martinez said. We didn't unite because we fear war. We united because we finally grew up enough to work together. Exactly, Ethan agreed. But the Empire doesn't see it that way. They believe species either fight or submit. The idea of choosing peace from a position of strength doesn't fit their worldview. Maria Ortiz tapped on her tablet and a new image appeared on the screen, a map showing dozens of worlds marked in different colors. I've been analyzing the data they shared. Every world marked in yellow is classified as having war-dreading species, and every single one is now a resource extraction colony with minimal rights. The council members exchanged worried glances. What about these green worlds? Admiral Franklin asked, pointing to several planets on the map. Those are species classified as war-capable but contained. They have more autonomy and better treatment, Maria explained. President Powell stood up and walked to the window. So we need the Empire to see us as dangerous enough to respect, but not dangerous enough to destroy. She turned back to the room. How do we manage that tightrope? Jack Watson, the head of Earth's intelligence service, who had been silent until now, cleared his throat. We've intercepted some Empire communications. Their translator technology isn't perfect for our language, and they don't realize we've cracked their basic codes. Everyone turned to him with interest. What did you find? President Powell asked. Admiral Zixthar has reported to his superiors. He's requested permission to make Earth an example to other potential rebellious worlds. He wants to destroy our moon base to show their power. The room erupted in voices until President Powell raised her hand for silence. The moon base has 300 people, she said quietly. We can evacuate, General Martinez said immediately. Quietly, make it look like normal rotation of personnel. Ethan's mind was racing. Wait, this might be an opportunity. Everyone stared at him as if he had gone mad. Explain, President Powell said, her voice cold. What if we let them think they've scared us? We evacuate the base secretly but make it look like it's still operating normally. When they attack it, we appear to surrender immediately. Surrender? General Martinez looked outraged. Appear to surrender, Ethan corrected. We invite their delegation to Earth to formalize terms. Meanwhile, we have time to prepare. Prepare what? Admiral Franklin asked. Our ships can't match theirs. Jack Watson smiled slightly. Actually, we've been holding some cards close to our chest. The advanced propulsion system we've been developing in secret? It works. We have 6 prototype ships that can match their speed, if not their weaponry. And I've been in contact with the science team, Maria added. They've been studying the Empire probe we captured last year. They think they can adapt our missiles to penetrate their shields. President Powell returned to her seat slowly. You're talking about war with a galactic empire. I'm talking about showing them we're not easily conquered, Ethan said. The Empire respects strength. If we demonstrate that we can hurt them, they might actually be willing to negotiate fairly. The room fell silent as everyone considered the enormity of what they were discussing. Humanity's first contact with alien life might lead to humanity's first interstellar war. We need to vote, President Powell said finally. General, how quickly can you evacuate the moon base? 3 days if we use all available shuttles. Jack, how reliable is your intelligence about when they plan to attack? The intelligence chief checked his notes. Their communications suggest 5 days from now. President Powell nodded. Then, we have a narrow window. I want hourly updates on the evacuation. Maria, work with the science team on those shield penetration missiles. Admiral Franklin, get your prototype ships ready but keep them hidden. She turned to Ethan last. And you, Diplomat Morris, will need to prepare for another meeting. One, where you'll need to look properly terrified and submissive. Ethan nodded. I can do that. This is an enormous gamble, President Powell said, looking around the table. If we're wrong about any part of this, it could mean the end of human civilization. And if we do nothing, Ethan replied, it means the slow death of human freedom. As the meeting ended and people rushed to their tasks, Ethan stayed behind with President Powell. Do you think we're doing the right thing? She asked him quietly, when they were alone. Ethan thought about the way Admiral Zixthar had dismissed humans as cowards who feared conflict. In human history, there have been many empires, he said. Every one of them believed they had the right to rule others because they were stronger. And every one of them eventually discovered that people who fight for their freedom are stronger than people who fight for conquest. President Powell nodded. Let's hope this empire learns that lesson without too much bloodshed. As Ethan left the council chamber, his thoughts turned to the 300 scientists and colonists on the moon base. They would be safe, but their home would be destroyed. The first shot in humanity's first interstellar war. He prayed it wouldn't be the war that ended human history. 5 days later, Ethan stood at the window of the observation deck in Earth's orbital station. His back was to the stars as he watched the faces of the other officials. No one spoke. They were waiting. The last shuttle from the moon base had arrived. Yesterday. The evacuation was complete, though the Empire didn't know that. From orbit, the base still appeared active with lights and automated systems running. Admiral Lisa Franklin checked her watch. If the intelligence is correct, it should happen any minute now. As if on cue, a flash of light appeared on the moon's surface. The explosion was silent from their distance, but they could see the dome of the base collapse. Dust rose in a perfect circle around the impact site. 300 people would have died if they had still been there. They didn't even warn us, someone whispered. President Powell's voice came through the communication system. Is everyone seeing this? Yes, Madam President, Admiral Franklin replied. The moon base has been destroyed exactly as predicted. Then we proceed with the plan. Ethan, you're on. Ethan nodded, though the president couldn't see him. He moved to the communication station where a technician was already setting up a channel to the Empire flagship. Remember, Admiral Franklin said quietly to him, you need to look defeated, scared. Ethan thought about the destruction he had just witnessed and found it wasn't hard to feel those emotions genuinely. The Empire had just casually destroyed humanity's first outpost beyond Earth. If there had been people there, the screen lit up showing Admiral Zixthar's alien face. All 4 of his eyes seemed to be watching for Ethan's reaction. Diplomat Morris, the Admiral said, his translation device making his voice flat and emotionless. I trust you observed our demonstration. Ethan let his hands shake visibly. You killed our people. A regrettable necessity. Your defiance required correction. Ethan lowered his head, the perfect picture of submission. The United Earth Council wishes to discuss surrender terms. There was a pause as the Admiral studied him. That was faster than expected. We have no desire to see Earth suffer the same fate as our moon base, Ethan said, his voice trembling slightly. The Council invites you to our NASA headquarters in Houston to formalize the agreement. Houston? Your space agency? Yes, it seemed appropriate. We can have the terms ready by tomorrow. The Admiral made that stone-grinding sound that passed for laughter. Very well. We will arrive with a delegation tomorrow. Prepare your leaders to sign your world away, human. The screen went dark. Ethan straightened up, his face transforming from fear to determination. He bought it, Admiral Franklin said. Of course he did, Ethan replied. He expected us to surrender. The Empire doesn't understand humans at all. The next day, 3 Empire shuttles landed at NASA headquarters in Houston. The sprawling complex appeared to be operating normally, with workers moving between buildings. In reality, most of the staff had been evacuated overnight, replaced by military personnel in civilian clothes. Ethan and a small delegation waited on the landing pad. His face was carefully arranged to show nervous defeat. Behind him stood President Powell, General Martinez, and several scientists selected for their frightened appearance. Admiral Zixthar emerged from the lead shuttle, followed by 6 other alien representatives. They looked around with obvious satisfaction. "Welcome to Earth," Ethan said, bowing slightly. "We have prepared the agreement room." The Admiral nodded and gestured for his delegation to follow. As they walked through the NASA complex, Ethan noticed the alien visitors looking curiously at the humans they passed. Most of the disguised soldiers kept their heads down, playing the part of defeated workers. They entered the main administration building and were led to a large conference room. A document was displayed on the main screen. "The surrender terms. Please be seated," President Powell said, speaking for the first time. "We have reviewed your original terms and are prepared to accept them with minor adjustments." The alien delegation sat at the long table with Admiral Zixthar at its head. He looked suspiciously at the president. "Adjustments?" "Nothing significant," she assured him. "Simply clarifications on resource quotas and personnel assignments." The Admiral seemed satisfied with this explanation and turned his attention to the document on the screen. As he and his delegation began reading, President Powell caught Ethan's eye and gave a tiny nod. Ethan pressed a button under the table. Immediately, metal shutters slammed down over the windows. The doors locked with loud clicks. The Empire delegation jumped to their feet in alarm. "What is the meaning of this?" Admiral Zixthar demanded. Instead of answering, President Powell walked to a side screen and turned it on. It showed a live feed of space above Earth. 6 ships had appeared from behind Earth's moon, human ships. They were smaller than the Empire vessels, but they moved with surprising speed. As the alien delegation watched in shock, the human ships opened fire on the Empire fleet. The first volley caught the Empire ships with their shields down. 2 smaller vessels exploded immediately. The others began to raise their defenses, but the human ships were already changing position, firing from new angles. "Impossible," one of the alien delegates whispered. "Your species doesn't have this technology." "Actually, we do," Ethan said, his posture now straight and confident. "We just didn't show it to you." Admiral Zixthar turned all 4 eyes on Ethan, his gray skin darkening with what might have been rage. "You lied. The moon base was empty." "Yes. Just like you lied about offering protection. We know what happens to war-dreading species in your empire." On the screen, more Empire ships were taking heavy damage. Their return fire was missing the faster, more agile Earth vessels. "You've made a terrible mistake," the Admiral said. "This is just one fleet. The Empire has thousands of ships, millions of soldiers." Ethan nodded. "We know. We don't expect to win a prolonged war against your entire empire. That's not our goal." "Then what is your goal?" the Admiral demanded. President Powell stepped forward. "To show you that humans don't fear war. We respect it. We understand its cost, which is why we avoid it when possible. But when pushed," she gestured to the screen where another Empire ship was breaking apart under Earth's attack. "You'll regret this defiance," the Admiral growled. "No," Ethan said quietly. "You'll regret not understanding who we are. Humanity united not because we feared war, but because we've seen too much of it. We chose peace among ourselves so we could be stronger together." On the screen, the remaining Empire ships were retreating, jumping to faster-than-light travel. The Earth vessels did not pursue. "Your delegation will be returned to your homeworld unharmed," President Powell said. "With a message: Earth is not available for conquest or colonization. We are open to true diplomatic relations as equals." Admiral Zixthar stared at the humans for a long moment. His expression was unreadable to human eyes. "The Empire does not negotiate with inferiors," he said finally. Ethan smiled slightly. "Then I suggest you stop seeing us as inferior. It's a mistake your empire cannot afford to make again." 3 months had passed since the battle above Earth, 3 months of constant change. Fleet Commander Daniel Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Earthship Defiant and watched the stars through the main viewport. In just 90 days, his life and the lives of every human had transformed beyond recognition. "Status report," he said, turning from the window. His second-in-command, Olivia Wright, approached with a tablet. She had been an engineer before the war, one of the brightest minds in propulsion technology. Now she was a soldier like everyone else. "The Empire battle group is still holding position near Saturn," she reported. "They haven't moved in 24 hours. Rodriguez nodded. The Empire had learned caution after their first disastrous encounter with humanity. They no longer rushed in expecting easy victory. "And our new ships?" "The first 3 are ready. They have the tracking system installed and tested." This was the news Rodriguez had been waiting for. Olivia's breakthrough might change the course of what people now called the First Contact War. The door to the bridge opened, and Ethan Morris entered. The diplomat looked tired. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and he had lost weight. Since the ED war began, Ethan had been working as a liaison between the military command and Earth's new allies. "You look like hell," Rodriguez said with a small smile. "Thank you for noticing," Ethan replied dryly. "I just finished a 6-hour negotiation with the Trell delegation." "How did it go?" "They're in. That makes 5 species who have joined our coalition." Rodriguez whistled softly. The Trell were fierce warriors who had been fighting a guerrilla war against Empire control for decades. Their support would be valuable. "The Empire is losing control of its outer territories," Ethan continued. "When we showed other subjugated worlds that the mighty Empire could be fought, it started a chain reaction." Olivia looked up from her work. "The Emperor won't like that." "The Emperor has bigger problems," Ethan said, handing Rodriguez a datapad. "Our intelligence network intercepted this transmission 6 hours ago." Rodriguez scanned the information, his eyes widening. "They removed Admiral Zixthar from command and replaced him with Admiral Krelvon. Apparently the Emperor was not pleased with Zixthar's failure to subdue the primitive humans." The 3 stood in silence for a moment, absorbing this news. The removal of their main enemy should have felt like a victory, but everyone knew it only meant the Empire was preparing for a more serious attack. "What do we know about this Krelvon?" Rodriguez asked. "He's different," Ethan replied. "More pragmatic, less arrogant. That makes him more dangerous in some ways, but also more likely to consider actual diplomacy." Olivia tapped on her tablet, bringing up a ship schematic on the main screen. "Well, he's about to learn that humans have been busy these past 3 months." The schematic showed an Empire cruiser with certain systems highlighted. "Is this what I think it is?" Rodriguez asked, studying the image. Olivia nodded, a hint of pride in her expression. "We've finally cracked their hyperspace signature. With my new tracking system, we can follow Empire ships through hyperspace jumps. This was revolutionary. Until now, Empire ships could simply jump away when battles turned against them, making it impossible for human forces to pursue. If Olivia's system worked, that advantage would be gone. Have you tested it?" Ethan asked. "Twice. On smaller jumps, it works perfectly." Rodriguez turned back to the viewport, his mind racing with possibilities. "This changes everything. If we can track their ships, we can hit their supply lines, their shipyards, maybe even their home systems." "The Emperor will have to negotiate," Ethan said. "Or commit more forces to crush us completely," Rodriguez countered. "This could make them more desperate, not less." Before anyone could respond, an alarm sounded. A communication officer called out, "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the Empire fleet." "On screen," Rodriguez ordered. The main display changed to show an alien face. Unlike Zixthar's gray skin and 4 eyes, this alien was blue-skinned, with a ridge of small spines running across his skull. "Admiral Krelvon." "I speak to the leaders of Earth," the Admiral said, his voice deep even through the translator. "This is Fleet Commander Rodriguez. I'm listening." "I have been authorized to open diplomatic channels with your world. The Empire wishes to avoid further bloodshed." The bridge crew exchanged surprised glances. Ethan stepped forward. This is Diplomat Morris. We're interested in peace, but only on fair terms. The Admiral's expression was difficult to read, but his voice remained measured. I understand your position. Unlike my predecessor, I do not underestimate humanity. That's wise, Rodriguez said. What do you propose? A meeting. Neutral territory, the mining station near your planet you call Mars, would be acceptable. After the transmission ended, Rodriguez, Ethan, and Olivia gathered in the commander's office to discuss this unexpected development. It's a trap, Rodriguez said immediately. Maybe, Ethan replied, but we can't dismiss the possibility that the Empire has realized this war is more costly than expected. Olivia studied the data on her tablet. Our intelligence shows the Empire is dealing with uprisings in 3 different sectors. They might genuinely need to end this conflict to deal with those problems. Rodriguez paced the small office. What if we use this opportunity for our own purposes? What do you mean? Ethan asked. We agreed to the meeting, but we set conditions. We demand they bring their command ship. Meanwhile, we prepare a strike force equipped with Olivia's tracking system. Ethan frowned. You want to use peace talks as cover for an attack? No, Rodriguez clarified. I want real peace talks. But I also want to be ready if they betray us. And if they refuse our conditions, that tells us everything we need to know about their intentions. The decision went to Earth's United Council. After hours of debate, they approved Rodriguez's plan. The response was sent to Admiral Krelvan. Earth would meet for peace talks, but only if the Empire brought their command ship as a show of good faith. To everyone's surprise, the Admiral agreed. 2 weeks later, as the massive Empire command ship approached Mars, Rodriguez watched from the bridge of the Defiant. All ships report ready, Olivia said. Tracking systems are online. And our special package? Rodriguez asked quietly. Loaded and ready. If they try anything, we can disable their ship without destroying it. Ethan adjusted his formal uniform. As Earth's chief diplomat, he would lead the peace delegation. Remember, he said to Rodriguez, our goal is still peace. Real peace, not surrender disguised as peace. Rodriguez nodded. I know, but the Empire needs to understand that humans negotiate from strength, not fear. As Ethan left for the shuttle bay, Rodriguez turned to Olivia. Do you think they've changed? Really changed how they see us? Olivia considered the question. 3 months ago, they thought we were primitive cowards. Now they're requesting peace. Talks. I'd say that's progress. Rodriguez smiled grimly. Let's hope it's enough. The massive Imperial command ship, Supreme Authority, hung in space above Mars, its dark hull blocking out the stars. Beside it, looking tiny by comparison, was the human flagship, Unity, recently completed and making its first diplomatic voyage. Between them floated the neutral meeting station, a converted mining facility that now served as the location for humanity's most important negotiation. Inside the station's main conference room, tension filled the air. On one side of the table sat the human delegation led by Ethan Morris. On the other side, Admiral Krelvan and his staff represented the Galactic Empire. Guards from both sides lined the walls, watching each other warily. Your terms are impossible, Admiral Krelvan said. His blue skin had darkened with emotion, the ridge of spines on his head fully extended in what humans had learned was a sign of anger. They are fair, Ethan replied calmly. Earth demands recognition as a sovereign world, not a subject, and the other 5 worlds in our coalition demand the same. The Admiral's translator device made a harsh sound as he spoke rapidly in his native language. When the translation came through, his voice was controlled again. The Empire has existed for 10,000 years. Thousands of worlds exist under our protection. We cannot simply release worlds because they ask. Not because they ask, Ethan corrected, because they have earned it. By standing against you, by proving they are not mere servants. The negotiations had been going for 3 hours, and they were stuck on this fundamental point. The Empire was willing to give Earth special status, even favorable trade terms, but would not acknowledge full independence or release the other worlds that had joined humanity's cause. In orbit above them, Fleet Commander Rodriguez watched the proceedings via secure transmission from the Unity. Beside him, Olivia Wright monitored the Empire ships with her new tracking system. "The Emperor's vessel has just arrived," she said suddenly. "It's keeping station behind Mars, out of direct view." Rodriguez straightened in his chair. This was unexpected. "The Emperor himself is here?" "Appears so. The ship matches all identification markers for the Imperial throne ship." This changed everything. Rodriguez opened a secure channel to Ethan's private communicator. When the diplomat subtly touched his ear in acknowledgement, Rodriguez whispered, "The Emperor is here. Behind Mars. This might be bigger than we thought." He saw Ethan's slight nod on the screen before returning his attention to the negotiations. "Perhaps we need to consider a different approach," Ethan was saying. "If the Empire truly cannot imagine releasing worlds from its control, then perhaps the nature of that control must change." Admiral Krelvon tilted his head in what humans had learned was a gesture of curiosity. "Explain. Instead of an empire that rules by force, imagine a commonwealth of worlds. Equal partners with shared defense and trade, but internal self-governance." The Admiral started to respond, but was interrupted when the door to the conference room slid open. Everyone turned to see who had entered. Even the Empire delegation looked surprised. A tall figure walked slowly into the room. His skin was deep purple, almost black, with intricate patterns etched across its surface. A crown-like structure of metal and crystal surrounded his elongated head. Every Empire representative immediately dropped to one knee. "Emperor Zorkath," Admiral Krelvon said, his voice filled with shock and awe. Ethan stood, as did the rest, of the human delegation. This was the ruler of 1,000 worlds, the being whose word was law across a significant portion of the galaxy. And somehow, he had decided to involve himself directly in this negotiation. "Rise," the Emperor said, his translator producing a rich, deep voice. "I would see these humans who have caused my empire so much trouble." The Emperor walked slowly around the table, studying each human delegate. When he reached Ethan, he stopped. "You are the one who first defied Admiral Zixthar," he said. It wasn't a question. "I am," Ethan replied, meeting the Emperor's gaze steadily. "Why?" The single word hung in the air. Ethan knew his answer might determine the fate of Earth and perhaps the entire galaxy. "Because your empire misunderstood us," he said simply. "You saw our unity as weakness, our desire for peace as fear. You thought we would surrender rather than fight. And yet here we are, discussing peace," the Emperor noted. "Was Zixthar not correct about humans after all?" Ethan shook his head. "There's a difference between dreading war and respecting it. Humans know war better than most species. We've fought countless conflicts throughout our history. We know its cost. That's why we choose peace when possible. But not peace at any price," the Emperor added. "No, not at the cost of our freedom, not at the cost of our dignity." The Emperor was silent for a long moment, studying Ethan's face. Then, to everyone's surprise, he pulled out a chair and sat at the table. "I have ruled the Empire for 300 years, he said. "In that time I have seen many species conquered, many worlds added to our domain. But I have never seen a species fight as you have fought, then negotiate as you have negotiated." The room was completely silent as the Emperor continued. "Your ships track ours through hyperspace now, a technology we thought impossible. Your coalition grows daily as more worlds see that the Empire can be challenged. And yet, when offered a chance for peace, you did not demand our destruction, only your freedom." The Emperor looked at Ethan with eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of centuries. "Tell me, human diplomat, what do humans truly dread?" Ethan thought carefully before answering. "We dread becoming what we hate. We dread trading our humanity for victory. We dread a galaxy where might makes right." For the first time, the Emperor's expression changed to something like surprise. He turned to Admiral Krelvon. "The Commonwealth concept the human suggested. It has merit." The Admiral looked stunned. "But, Your Majesty, the Empire has always adapted," the Emperor interrupted. "That is how we have survived for 10,000 years. Perhaps it is time for another adaptation. What followed was unlike any negotiation in human or imperial history. The Emperor himself led the discussions, working with Ethan to sketch the outline of a new interstellar organization, not an empire of subjects, but a commonwealth of equals. 3 days later, when the final document was signed, Fleet Commander Rodriguez and Olivia Wright joined Ethan on the observation deck of the station. Through the window, they could see both the Imperial ships and the human fleet floating peacefully side by side. "I still can't believe it worked," Rodriguez said, shaking his head in wonder. "The Emperor is wiser than we thought," Ethan replied. "He saw that the old empire was beginning to crumble. We just showed him a better path forward." Olivia pointed to where a new ship was approaching. The first joint human Imperial vessel, built with technology from both civilizations. "What happens now?" she asked. Ethan watched as the ship docked with the station. "Now we teach them about cooperation instead of conquest. We show them why humanity chose peace among ourselves." Rodriguez smiled slightly. "And we remind them what happens if they forget the lesson." The first crew of the joint ship emerged from the airlock, humans and Empire species working together. Among them was Admiral Krell Vaughn, now appointed as the first Commonwealth ambassador. "They thought we dreaded war," Ethan said quietly. "Now they know we dream of something better."